Hi, welcome or welcome back to Lost in Thought. My name is Jen and today I'd like to show you how to look after or maintain your historical, your authentic shoes. So I'm going to assume that you already own a pair of turn shoes or you are about to purchase some, and these aren't usually like looking after a normal pair of shoes. I mean, I don't know about you personally, but I very rarely spend over £15 on a pair of shoes for modern day wear. However, a decent pair of turn shoes tends to start at about £50–60. So it's a big price difference to what I usually spend on footwear. And with good care, with good maintenance, a pair of decent turn shoes like this can last you a good few years. So it's really simple and it's definitely worth it as well. So for this, obviously, you need your turn shoes or whatever historical shoes you're using. This works just as well on Roman caligae as any other sort of leather shoe. A sort of nylon-y plastic bristle bush, some beeswax, perhaps some dubbing. This is the type I use. It's a fairly big tub and it wasn't too expensive. I think it was £8 for that massive tub. An old scrap bit of fabric, and also a mild heat source. So I just use this craft heat tool, but a hairdryer will do also just as good. So first things first, any toggles, any laces, anything like that, you would like to remove them. That way the shoe, there we go, you can get under all the nooks and crannies and you're not leaving any bit out. And then taking the nylon bristle brush, especially if you've been wearing these anywhere muddy, is just simply give them a really good brush. Make sure you're removing any of that loose debris, any of that loose mud, that material. Just as a side note, if you've worn your historical shoes, your leather shoes, and it was an event where they got really muddy or really wet, make sure that you allow them to dry naturally. So leave them somewhere not in front of a fire, but give them time to dry. I think last time I went to a really soggy show, I think it took about 3 or 4 days for these to dry out. So just give them a good brush, make sure you're getting rid of all the dust, the dirt, the mud, the debris. Also important is in the sides here where the sole meets the upper, is just run it gently along there as well in case there's any bits of gravel or mud or anything that you don't want in between there. So not too hard because you don't want to damage any of the stitching, but just enough that it brings out that gunk. Once the shoe is visibly clean, once it's clean over the debris, any dirt, just grab your scrap piece of fabric. So I'm just using an offcut of linen that I used on a previous project, and I'm using the dubbing. Now you don't want a lot on your fabric, so I'm literally just the tiniest bit. It's easier just to put a little bit on than loads of it. And all I'm doing is I'm going to start slowly rubbing it into the shoe. So I'm spreading it around. If I need to get a little bit more, I can. And I'm just giving it a really good coating of the dubbing. Once your shoe's completely covered, just give it a couple of minutes to soak in, to rest. Just pop it at the side, give it a couple of minutes, do the other one while you're waiting for that to soak in. Just give it, again, a nice covering of it. Once they're nicely covered, what I find really important is in this crack here, well, where the sole meets the upper, that's usually where you get a lot of water coming into your shoe. And the way that I find best to sort of almost waterproof it is to take a block of beeswax like this and just holding it slightly open is just try and force as much as you can down there. It does two things. It conditions the thread that's holding the shoe together, and in a minute it should be able to seal it a bit better. So they're not going to be completely waterproof, and I think it's completely unreasonable to expect 100% waterproof historical shoes like this. But if you just get it as much as you can in the crack and give it a good sort of rub it in, this should hopefully keep some of that water out. Another thing to remember is if you're not wearing your turn shoes for a few months, so usually for most people that's over winter, I wear my turn shoes 2, 3, 4 times a week. The best thing to do is just stuff the inside with either a little bit of newspaper so it keeps the shape, so the leather's not touching each other, and then leave it somewhere that's quite cool, so not hot but also not freezing cold, cool and dry. That way when you come back to wearing them, they shouldn't have gone mouldy and they should be in just as good as condition as when you left them. Then we're going to use the heat tool. So you can use a hairdryer or a candle if you're really careful. I choose this just because it's not really hot. You don't want to burn the leather. Leather, remember, it's like your skin. So if it's too hot for your skin, it's going to be too hot for your shoe as well. So we're going to keep it a good few centimetres away from the shoe. I'm just going to very lightly warm up that beeswax and that dubbing. So keep the heat tool moving or the hairdryer moving, whatever you're doing, keep it moving. So don't allow any one part of the shoe to get really hot. If it's too hot for your skin, it's too hot for the shoe. So that will melt the beeswax that are in those cracks, helping to waterproof it, and it will also help the dubbing to soak more into the shoe, so we're protecting more of it. Again, just keeping it moving, keeping it going around. One or 2 minutes for each shoe is absolutely perfect. You don't want it to be prolonged, you don't want to spend a long time on it, you just want to make sure it's soaked in a little bit better. Then finally, taking that rag again, we buff the shoes up. So just really work in the dubbing, the beeswax, everything we've put on the shoe to help protect it. Really just give it a really good rub, buff it, polish it. What you're trying to do is still force the wax or the dubbing into the shoe, into the leather, further protecting it. So give it some good time. Make sure you go around, especially down here as well. So give it a really good polishing. Don't forget also to treat any toggles, any laces the same way. A little bit of dubbing again. Make sure, give it a good few minutes and then buff it up. Once you've done that, just put the laces back in the shoe or the toggles and that's it. It's really simple. It takes 10 minutes out of your day, but It really helps the shoes to last for many, many, many years. Perfect. Just want to say thank you ever so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you've liked this video, please like, comment, and more importantly, please subscribe. But my name's been Jen. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Goodbye for now.